Halley's Comet Expedition. Written, produced, narrated, and filmed by James Lenz. This is a photograph taken of Halley's Comet in 1910. A small group of Minnesotans plans and completes an expedition to photograph and verify the return of this fantastic celestial event exactly 76 years later. A large amount of preparation is needed for an expedition as adventuresome as this one. The first is having preparation parties and, of course, showing the proper etiquette that one would show at an educational event such as this. Here is a photograph of the small group of Minnesotans that met weekly in a small bar in northeast Minneapolis. Going around the table is first on the left is Tom Werner, a fellow who actually could not join us on the expedition because he had no blue jeans. Next to him is Rich Solstad, also a fellow who did not join us on the expedition, and we never really did find out why. Next to him is David Stoltzman, a well-known amateur astronomer in the Twin City area, and a leader and organizer of this expedition. At the end of the table is Howard French, probably the only true astronomer of the entire group, and a person who would not associate himself with this group outside of this bar. Coming back around the table is Robert Leach, a fellow from Wisconsin, a fellow with a physics degree, a fellow who likes to drink beer, and thus a fellow who we knew would like to have a good time. Next to him, peeking out, is Tom Bieber, also a well-known amateur astronomer by the few that actually do know him. He also could not accompany us on this trip because of medical problems. And, of course, there am I. A large amount of study must go into an expedition as complex as this one. Here are shown some papers that we used to select the optimum site. We based our decisions on weather conditions and the ability for us to get all of our equipment to the site on a limited budget. After searching through the data and looking at sites varying from South America to Australia to Arizona, we chose southern Arizona as the best site based on weather conditions and low crowds. We then sent away for data in this area of Ajo, Arizona, and we selected the campsite in Organ Pipe National Monument. Everyone was very excited about this site until we read in the brochure that we would be not allowed to harm the rattlesnake. To prepare my family for the early morning hours required of observational astronomy, I woke them on a February morning to head to St. Paul to photograph that elusive feature known as the St. Paul Winter Carnival Ice Palace. The mission was a success. To record and photograph the comet for the very first time, I woke my daughter Bridget and her friend Tara at 2 o'clock in the morning on March 20th, 1986, to head to Stillwater to observe the comet. It was a very, very cold morning, about 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Here are some photographs taken of that on that fateful night. I shot a roll of 24 prints, of which only 2 turned out. As you can see, several photographs have some problems. In fact, this would be one of my first encounters with people that print film, and some disagreements. They gave me some notes on how to improve my vision, improve my camera, clean my camera. In fact, they stamped the middle of one of my better prints. I did not let this bother me though, and here is one of those 2 photographs that actually did turn out. Here you can see the comet just above the tree line in the middle of the frame. To the very right is the planet Mars, the bright object, and then between that is the Milky Way. Stoltzman started to bring in some photographs he had taken earlier in the year. Here's a photograph of the comet as it passed the Pleiades. David would become a very famous and noted artist for this type of work. In fact, a prominent article was written about him in the St. Paul newspaper. Here is the best photograph that David had taken of the comet. It was taken in January of 1986. To add to our excitement and enthusiasm for the return of Halley's Comet, we began to add some false color to these black and white photographs. The first here was done by David in his basement, where he used a simple technique of blue and red filters. Not to be outdone by that simple technique, we digitized the photograph and put it into a VAX computer. Now one can see some of these more elaborate false color renditions of that black and white photograph. In fact, all of the pictures that one sees of Halley's Comet are actually false color images. The comet really has no color. It is just a white, fuzzy ball. The false color adds to the beauty and knowledge of the comet. Here's a photograph of our campsite, where I established our tent for the sleeping and the screen tent for eating. Of course, when the ground was too hard to drive ordinary stakes into, I ended up using rocks and my Craftsman screwdrivers. Are running to photograph the sunset. Just behind the yellow jacket is an organ pipe cactus, and of course the sunlight radiating off the Ajo Mountains. Of course, then once evening hit, the the stars came out like freshly brewed beer out of a fully filled tap. Here's a photograph of the saguaro cactus and the star Sirius. Just off to the right, you can see 3 stars of Orion's belt. Here's another photograph of the constellation Orion, and then off to the left is the star Sirius. The viewing was magnificent of these nighttime objects. Here's some photographs taken by David Stoltzman through a Schmidt camera. These are some type of nebulae. Also, with the larger telescopes, we were able to take pictures of the several different galaxies. Here is shown a famous spiral galaxy. Of course, at night, it is true, there are many scorpions, and as most people would be afraid of them, but not the Stoltzmans. They actually would go out seeking them at night with lights and collecting them. Both Bridget and JJ began to enjoy this event quite a lot.
Yes, so where is that big comet? So let's take a look at the perspective of the galaxy or the solar system as the comet is coming by. Here's 1986 that we were viewing. This was in January. You see the small little dot planets that are in there, and then you see Earth on the bottom of the slide and Venus near the top, and all the other planets out on the perspective as they're perspected onto the ecliptic as it goes from our viewing point of the Earth. So you see the comet as it's coming in towards the sun. So we saw this here in the early part, and now this is when the comet is behind the sun, so we can't see it any longer. This was in the February-March time frame, and here's when we start to go and look for our comet in the April time frame. We start to get a good view, perspective of where the Earth is and where the sun is, and the tail is being flared away. But here again, now the comet is very close to the Earth. We're very lucky to see that, but we just don't have the very good perspective to see a long tail. And again, you see the planets and their perspective with the rest of the solar system. And here is now in May and June, and now the Halley's Comet is moving out of being near the sun. So this is a very poor perspective. So if we look at where things were in 1910, I'll show all the planets here again, but you can see Venus, Earth, and Mars pretty easily, and Mercury is a little dot you can see on there as well. And here it is as the comet is coming first towards the sun again. And now 1 month later, here you can start to see a really great perspective. This is in the May-June time frame in 1910. You see the perspective that the Earth has of the comet. And here again is now July time frame, and again very good perspective of the tail. But now again the comet is too far from the sun to probably get a lot of flare off that device. Here we are in 2061. One can start to look as the comet comes near again, and where the Earth perspective is going to be. Things are going to look very good there, it looks like. This is in the June time frame here, 2061. And we go to another perspective. This is July. You expect to see a very good tail here because the comet is very close to the sun, and we're going to get a very nice perspective of that. You can see, again, the Earth looking very directly at that on the Sagittarius. You're standing on the sun. And then as we come by here again, now you should be able to see Venus and Mars. You see this perspective. Venus, Mars, and the comet will all be in the same field of view here in August 2061. What a time to go and watch the comet.